It's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as Will Ospreay wants to wrestle CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, and Kenny Omega. A WWE champion appears on a huge boxing event, and 2 released WWE superstars have signed for Impact Wrestling. All that and more coming up in today's video, but first... This week, AEW's Bryan Danielson appeared in an interview with WDEL.com and discussed his retirement from wrestling in 2015. At the time, it was believed that the then Daniel Bryan stepped out of the ring due to repeated head injuries, but Bryan has now revealed the real reason he was kept out of the ring. Bryan would reveal that it wasn't the concussions that kept him away, it was that he lied and covered them up from the WWE medical team, and said, "One of the reasons I was forced to retire was not because of the concussions, but because I lied about that. You have to understand, from WWE's point of view, I had been wrestling for them for 6 years, but then all of a sudden, they opened this Pandora's box about lying about his medical history, and now we can't trust him." Bryan, who would remain retired for 2 years, revealed that he spent that time regaining trust, whilst proving that his brain was healthy, and said, "A lot of that was building the trust back, but they were also legitimately looking after my health. I was going to see doctor after doctor and doing everything that I could to improve my brain function to show, above and beyond, that my brain was healthy. It's also my love of wrestling. It felt like I wasn't ready to be done yet, I still needed to come back. I also think there's a lot left on concussion research to be done, and when you're seeing the top doctors in the country and they're all clearing you to do what you love to do, I think you should be able to do that." Bryan would then wrestle again at WrestleMania 34, teaming up with Shane McMahon to take on Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, and would go on to win the WWE Championship shortly after. Of course, he now works in All Elite Wrestling following his WWE departure earlier this year after main eventing WrestleMania 37 in April. Last night, Game Changer Wrestling held their Fight Club event, and the show would see some surprise appearances, with Thunder Rosa and the Briscoe brothers showing up in Atlantic City. The Briscoes would confront GCW Tag Team Champions Mance Warner and Matthew Justice after their 6-man tag win. This seems to confirm their next challengers for the titles. Thunder Rosa would take part in the Scramble match, which was set to feature Gringo Loco, Jimmy Lloyd, Calvin Tankman, Braden Lee, Dante Leon, and ASF, before the AEW star showed up right before the bell to a huge pop. However, she was unable to come away with the win, instead with Jimmy Lloyd coming away with his hand raised high. Elsewhere on the show, Matt Cardona would win back his self-created Internet Championship from Effie, who won the belt late last month. Cardona would win thanks to interference from his real-life fiancée, Chelsea Green. GCW Fight Club would be main evented by a match for the GCW World Championship, with champion Jon Moxley defending against the violent Nick Gage. The belt would be presented by hardcore legend Mick Foley before the match. In the end, Moxley would retain his title after a brutal death match between the two competitors, making the first defense of his reign. The former AEW World Champion would win the GCW World title last month at the Art of War Games event, defeating then champion Matt Cardona in less than a minute. GCW is set to hold another show tonight called The Aftermath, which is expected to see the debut of former WWE wrestler Fandango under the new name of Dirty Dango. The show will also feature Minoru Suzuki, Mercedes Martinez, and many more, and is available using our Fight affiliate link in the description below if you fancy checking it out. This weekend, AEW President Tony Khan would get a lot of people talking about a tweet he made which laid down a gauntlet to WWE and the SmackDown brand, who is set to go head-to-head with AEW Rampage for half an hour this Friday. The clash will occur after Fox moved SmackDown to FS1 due to the MLB playoffs, whilst extending the show by 30 minutes. In case you missed yesterday's video, Khan would tweet, "I saw you doing half an hour head-to-head with us. I can't wait to finally beat your main show head-to-head. It's been a long time coming. See you next Friday for AEW Rampage on TNT." Tony would reply to a fan that stated his comments may age poorly due to Rampage going up against Sasha Banks, taking on WWE SmackDown Women's Champion Becky Lynch in a non-title main event, and Khan didn't seem concerned and said, If I'm not sweating it, you shouldn't be either. This is what sports are about. Set a goal and try your best. We've got a great AEW Rampage card Friday, plus big Dynamite matches Saturday. I expect to do well, but regardless of next Friday's stats, it'll be a great weekend for the fans. Khan would add that he hopes to recreate the WWE-WCW rivalry from the 90s, minus the errors on WCW's part, and would say, Twitter's the child of the boards/chat rooms that thrived during the 90s wrestling war. Part of my business plan is recreating that competitive spirit while avoiding WCW's errors, which is why I pace, don't blow through matches. AEW has many years worth of big matches up my sleeve. Whilst many commented on yesterday's video saying that Rampage won't get close to SmackDown, it's worth remembering that the show will be on FS1 and not Fox, which will naturally cause a decrease in viewership. With that said though, SmackDown will be running for the last half an hour with no adverts, which means that channel switches could be less likely to happen. Whether Rampage beats SmackDown or not, it's fun to see the AEW president punch up to WWE, and if you think his tweet was bad, you should have seen the back and forth between WCW and WWF during the Monday Night Wars. Khan's goal was to get people talking about Rampage, and guess what? It worked. And quickly, just before we continue, make sure you drop a like on the video as it helps me out a lot, and make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any upcoming wrestling content as we head, hopefully, towards 100,000 subscribers. But now, let's press play on the video. Self-proclaimed IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Will Ospreay appeared in an interview with SES Scoops this week, where he discussed a number of challenges that have came his way from top AEW wrestlers. AEW World Champion Kenny Omega, CM Punk and Bryan Danielson have all spoken of their desire to wrestle Ospreay in the past, a challenge in which he welcomes. Ospreay would address his potential opponents from through the Forbidden Door and said, "Guys like Bryan Danielson made a living being one of the best wrestlers in the world, but if I showed up, he would not last in the ring with me. Kenny Omega was the guy in New Japan Pro-Wrestling. He left, I took over, nobody could compete with me in 2019. If I got in the ring with him, I'd embarrass him. CM Punk called me out when he wasn't a wrestler, so in that case he was keeping an eye on me the entire time, looking at me and thinking, I'm a challenge, and damn right, I'm a challenge, I'm the challenge." Ospreay would then hone in on CM Punk's moniker of the best in the world, stating that in 2011 when he came up with the catchphrase, he was simply the best of a bad bunch, and said, "He says he's the best wrestler in the world. When was he saying that? 2011? Was he the best in the world, or was he the best of a bad bunch? Maybe you were the best at that time. Are you the best now? No. You're nowhere near Will Ospreay's level, so step up, brother. I'm ready for you." Ospreay is currently refusing to work shows in Japan for New Japan Pro-Wrestling due to the company stripping him of his IWGP World Heavyweight title following an injury earlier this year, an injury that he recovered from sooner than expected. He is instead wrestling on their American brand New Japan Strong, whilst claiming to still be world champion. As we discussed in yesterday's video, Ospreay is set to appear for another United States promotion, that being Major League Wrestling, with his debut set to take place in November, which means New Japan are willing to loan him out to American promotions. Whether or not we'll see him take on the likes of Omega, Punk or Bryan in an AEW or New Japan ring is still yet to be seen, although it's clear the wrestlers involved want it to happen. Last night, the boxing world saw the much anticipated trilogy fight between heavyweights Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, with Wilder being introduced to the ring by a popular WWE star. Before Wilder's entrance, WWE Champion Big E would cut a promo to hype up the challenger, talking of a chance of redemption after his loss last time around, telling the Bomb Squad to feel the power. E was also present at ringside for the fight. Unfortunately for Big E and Deontay Wilder, his words and presence weren't enough, as Tyson Fury would knock him out in the 11th round of the 12-round fight. With that said though, this is no doubt a huge spot for the WWE Champion to be in, with the boxing event being a big mainstream success. And finally, two recently released WWE superstars have been confirmed for the upcoming Impact Wrestling Bound for Glory pay-per-view. The Iconics, now known as The Inspiration, were confirmed for the show at the end of last night's Impact Knockouts Knockdown all-female event. Cassie Lee and Jessie McKay are expected to compete in the Knockouts Tag Team division, having been WWE Women's Tag Team Champions in the past. It's currently unclear if the duo will be wrestling at BFG or simply making an appearance in a non-wrestling capacity. Bound for Glory will be held in less than 2 weeks' time and will be live from Las Vegas, Nevada, and the show is set to be headlined by an Impact World Championship match, with champion Christian Cage set to defend against former X Division champion Josh Alexander. The show could also see a number of other debuts, with the promotion interested in bringing in both Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman, although no deal is said to be agreed at this point. And before you go, make sure you check out my video where I discussed the secret wrestling returns of CM Punk before he showed up in AEW.